Palantir got hit with a double-decker today. This is a double-decker, folks. First off, Pentagon budget cuts, talking about cutting 8%, right? Which shouldn't come as a surprise. Like, here's the thing. If you're going to cut any major expenses, if Doge is going to cut in any major way, you've got to either eat into defense budgets, right? Or you got to eat into Medicare, Medicaid, those sorts of things, or you got to eat into Social Security. That's where all the money's really spent. Like, everything else is child's play money, is little stuff. If you look at where the budget's actually spent, it's defense, and it's like, government programs like Social Security and Medicare and those sorts of things, okay? So at the end of the day, like, if we're really talking about making big strides here, we got to cut defense, right? Now, there's a couple different ways to read this. One is you could see it as a TAM that's less big for Palantir to go after in the government space, which is true. Like if there's less to go after, there's less to go after. The other way you could look at that is, well, Palantir might not get as hit by this as, let's say, Lockheed Martin or some other defense contractors that have much bigger businesses. Because you got to understand, like, Palantir in the realm of like how much money they make from the defense sector compared to some of the other big giants, it's actually a very small amount. That is something to keep in mind. So Palantir could keep growing their defense business even if the government, let's call it, is shrinking how much they want to spend. That's just something to keep in mind. It's no guarantee, but it's a possibility, right? Second way I would kind of think about it is, a lot of us that are invested in Palantir or not invest in Palantir because of the defense side of the business. Like, that's cool. Like, but that's not why I'm investing in Palantir. Like, if you look back to when I was buying the stock very heavily back in 2022, what did I tell you guys? I'm buying this because of the commercial opportunity. I was buying it because of what Foundry could do, right? And how that could change companies. And then AIP just put everything on the juice, right? And so my thought process about Palantir is, if this company was going to become a 10x company, 100x company, whatever, right? It was going to be basically on the back of commercial business, not on the back of government business, and not on the back of the defense. So that's another way to keep I think, a frame around this subject. But I can understand it's being seen as a negative because at the end of the day, Palantir's growth rates are starting to get up there, right? And we could be talking about 40% plus revenue growth next quarter. And listen, any potential hitting of the growth rate, a few quarters from now could definitely, hammer the stock pretty darn hard, right? So every bit matters in this game at this point in time. It's a game of high stakes poker, right? Second, the Alice Carp sales. Now, this to me mattered actually more than the Pentagon budget cuts. Now, to the market, they don't look at it like that. The market cares much more about the Pentagon budget cuts. Me personally, I care more about the carp sales, right? And talking about, selling up to $1.2 billion worth of stock over the next 6 months, right? And my opinion perspective is I don't love it. I don't love it. Carp's already sold shares, right? And to dump another 1 billion plus, because you got to understand where I always love to listen to what the bears have to say on a stock I own and the bulls have to say. I don't just tune out one side. I'm too mature for that. I've been in this game 16 years. When I first got started in the market, bears offended me. I would get very emotional, like, oh, you're saying something bad about my stock. Nowadays, I go out of my way to hear bearish theses now and bearish thoughts. And do you want to tell me, I'll tell you one of the bearish thoughts around Palantir. One of the bearish thoughts around Palantir is Alex Karp pumps and pumps and pumps the stock, right? Says this and says that. And what does he do? He dumps shares on the back of retail shareholders who are dumb enough to keep buying the stock, right? And that's what bears say time and time again. If you ask Palantir bears, they'll tell you exactly that. The company trades at a ridiculous valuation. Karp pumps it, retail pumps it, and then he dumps his shares right on retail's heads, right? And so that's an argument that's made, and it doesn't look great when then Karp's going to sell $1 billion plus of shares, right? It doesn't look great. And when he's already done big sales, it's just not a good look. It's not a good look, right? It's kind of like, it more proves like the bear's point in regards to that more than anything. So to me, that's actually a bigger thing. I don't love it. It is what it is. Like, it is what it is. Like, we got to deal with it, right? Now, additionally, And the third thing, talking about valuation, stock being way overbought. Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, and that's what I've been talking about for the last couple months in regards to Palantir. The thing is, when you got a stock and that's just an incredible momentum uptrend there, just because it's overbought doesn't mean it can't get more overbought, right? And just because the P's pretty insane doesn't mean it can't get more insane. So that's something to kind of keep in mind there, right? Now, I was asking for other people's opinions in regards to this and kind of what they thought. Some people cared about it. Some people were kind of indifferent about it, right? The thing that's important to understand is there's many reasons why a CEO would sell shares or an executive would sell shares, right? It could be Karp's looking at it and he's like, this valuation is ridiculous. I need to sell shares, right? He could be looking at it from a perspective of most of my wealth is tied up in the stock. I need to diversify some wealth, right? He could be looking at it as he wants to use some money to found another company that's totally different than a Palantir. There could be a lot of different reasons. He could want to go buy a mega mansion or a few mega mansions for that matter, right? There could be 1.2 billion different reasons why a CEO or an executive sells a stock, but always do remember, there's only one reason that a CEO or an executive would ever buy a stock, and that's because they believe it's going to go higher, right? But when it comes to sales, there's a lot of different reasons. So that's just something to kind of factor in there and kind of keep in mind. My opinion is, this will definitely dent Palantir a bit for a while here, right? There's no doubt in my mind, at least, that this will dent it for a little bit. And the reason being is you got the double decker, right? If it was just one, if we just had to deal with the Karp sales, 1.2 billion over the next 6 months, or if we just had to deal with the, Pentagon cutting defense budget, that would be one thing. But the fact that you got both on a stock that already had a massive valuation, that's where it starts to actually, the momentum starts to fade. And you got to understand there's a lot of momentum traders in this, a lot of swing traders in it. And the more this one flushes, the more it will flush, essentially, because you get more and more just saying abandon ship, right? So you got to understand there's some people that have been buying Palantir 124, 125 recently. If you're a trader and you were buying the stock the other day at 124 because there were 125, guess what? Stock's at 107 right now. Oh boy. What happens if this goes down to 100? If it goes to 95? Stop losses will be hit left and right from the trader community, and you got to understand that, right? So, and I also think, from some of the longs, this might be the first time that some of them consider maybe taking some profits, because it has been a heck of a run in Palantir. And for some of the longs, they might not have been taking profits, and this might be the first kind of shakeup to be like, okay, you know what? Let me maybe take some off the table. It's been a heck of a run. So, we'll see what happens. But that's kind of my opinion and perspective on what will transpire from here.
Hey, it's Jeremy. I hope you really enjoyed that clip here today. What you're looking at in front of you right there, that's 1000xstocks.com. That is my personal advanced software that I use to make my investment decisions when I go to invest in companies. As somebody that's been in the market 15 years, I got sick and tired of using these different services that folks have out there that are designed for traders in the market. People that are looking to get in and out of stocks. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to long-term invest. I need to be able to see all the different ratios and metrics that are very important for me as a long-term investor to judge if I'm getting a great deal on a stock or if I'm getting ripped off on a stock. I need to be able to compare different companies versus each other and be able to do that in a matter of seconds rather than it taking hours like it used to before I created this service. I want the ability to listen to conference calls, see SEC filings all in one service. That is what we've created with 1000xstocks.com. If you are looking to access this software, go down to the description area of this video. You can click the link down there and apply for access. If you don't want to do that and you want to search a website, go to 1000xstocks.com. Enjoy it.
And I did sell some more Palantir here today, cashed some more profits there, 277 shares, $117.29 I got for those shares, so around $32,000. So I still have around $27,000 or $28,000 to invest. Likely tomorrow, I'll figure out what I want to do there. I'm trying to figure out, do I want to hedge? Do I just want to buy some more Nike, AMD, Celsius, stocks like that? Kind of figuring out, obviously, Palantir is just an incredible bull run right now. This will not last forever, but, could it last maybe a few more weeks or a few more months? It's definitely possible. If they come in next quarter have another blowout earnings and then another great guide. We could keep this momentum going for a little bit. Obviously, the valuation's getting ridiculous. Palantir, best case scenario, probably does $4 billion of revenue in 2025. And the market capitalization of this company's, if it keeps going up, it's going to be pushing over $300 billion. So we're talking getting close to 100 price to sales ratio. So, even if you were to say company gets to revenue of 10 billion over the next few years, which is possible, at the market cap we're at right now, if we're pushing close to 300 billion here very shortly, that would still be a 30 price to sales ratio. And that's based upon revenue that's years away from hitting. Like, it's not like we're hitting $10 billion this year or next year. Like I said, we'll be fortunate if we get to 4 billion this year. 10 billion is still several years out. And so the valuation is just getting ridiculous. But we're in a very hyped up bull cycle in regards to Palantir. So as a bull, as somebody that's held these shares, like, it's just a gift, man. I'm just like, okay, thank you. I'll gladly keep taking profits on this in regards to that, right? So Palantir is a rare example of a company that is just like making everybody happy. Like, the short-term traders are happy that are just keep buying calls on it and keep kind of playing the short-term game. The long-term investors like myself are happy because we're just getting to take ridiculous profits on this stock, right? Look I'm up 1,476% on the shares I have remaining here in Palantir. It's insane, man. Current value 293 and then total gains 274. Like, it's just insane, man. Thank you. Bigs. So AMD and Nike, they've now big positions in the public count. Like, these positions are really going to matter over the next few years. And if AMD and Nike perform very well over this next 2-3 years, it's going to be very good news for the public account overall. And I expect them to perform very good. And that's regardless of the economy. I don't really care what happens with the economy, what happens with the stock market. Like, AMD and Nike should do, because the stories are so good for the next couple of years in terms of keeping costs down and the revenue rise over the next few years. Like, regardless, Nike and AMD are in a great position to prosper over this next 2 or 3 years. And so I think those positions, if we look out, a couple of years from now, I wouldn't be surprised if both of those positions are $300,000 to $500,000 positions, if not even larger than that. So looking good there. And then Celsius and Estes are what I call little bigs. So they're under $100,000 positions, but they are decent sized positions in themselves. And so, Celsius is a really attractive opportunity. If it went down on earnings, it'd be even more attractive. But even here, man, in this like $20, $21, $22 range is just incredibly attractive. The risk reward there is pretty darn exciting, right? But like I said, I just like to pair it with a monster investment as well, which couldn't fit on the screen here, but I like to pair it with that monster investment just in case I'm wrong on Celsius, right? Then Monster's the biggest beneficiary of that, right? And then EL's kind of into a little big now. This is one that I'm just like, I'm so bullish on this one the next few years. This is more of a turnaround play. All these companies kind of have different things going for them. AMD's more of just a growth story. Nike's a little bit more of turnaround, right? And then Celsius is just, people are caught up in the short-term numbers. And then Estee is a little bit more of a turnaround play. Estee is a much bigger turnaround story, though, than Nike is in terms of Estee Lauder's been hit a lot harder. It's coming from a lot lower base. Nike's not that bad. Like, Nike's fall off is still anybody else's biggest success ever. So there's a difference there, okay?
Hey, it's Jeremy. I hope you really enjoyed that clip here today. What you're looking at in front of you right there, that's 1000xstocks.com. That is my personal advanced software that I use to make my investment decisions when I go to invest in companies. As somebody that's been in the market 15 years, I got sick and tired of using these different services that folks have out there that are designed for traders in the market. People that are looking to get in and out of stocks. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to long-term invest. I need to be able to see all the different ratios and metrics that are very important for me as a long-term investor to judge if I'm getting a great deal on a stock or if I'm getting ripped off on a stock. I need to be able to compare different companies versus each other and be able to do that in a matter of seconds rather than it taking hours like it used to before I created this service. I want the ability to listen to conference calls, see SEC filings all in one service. That is what we've created with 1000xstocks.com. If you are looking to access this software, go down to the description area of this video. You can click the link down there and apply for access. If you don't want to do that and you want to search a website, go to 1000xstocks.com. Enjoy it.
Alrighty, let's get into some big tech talk.
Things off. Tell us what you're seeing on the ground there as it pertains to demand for the semiconductor space. Yeah, I mean, since October, we're seeing about a 12 to 15% increase in terms of demand. And that's significant, clearly a good barometer going into NVIDIA next week. But I think it just shows these enterprise use cases are exploding. And that is really accelerating demand because no one wants to sort of lose their spot in line. And I think that's just more and more bullish for the AI revolution, the second, third, fourth derivatives. I mean, that's so far from our trip, very, very bullish and feeling really good going into NVIDIA next week.
Is NVIDIA still a top pick for you? Everything you're seeing there just reinforcing what you like?
I think it's a table pounder. I think it's going to be a $4 trillion and eventually $5 trillion market cap because there's only one red phone to call for these chips. It's the godfather of AI, Jensen, NVIDIA. And what I'd also tell you, and we talk about in the note, from a DeepSeek perspective, 45, 50 enterprises, not one has changed plans post DeepSeek. I think it just shows this CapEx doubling down. That's what we're seeing across, not just big tech, but across enterprise.
Dan, there were some takes last week on this AI summit in Europe where some of the survey work being done had some constituents saying, yeah, we're curious, but we're not seeing outright value on these investments quite yet. Where do you think AI, how much of IT budgets does it make up and how much could it get to?
Yeah. I mean, Carl, I think that's why you look at names like Palantir, right? It kind of sort of the golden child in terms of use cases, monetization, as it's already playing out. We believe everything we're seeing, it's about 10% IT budgets, and in some cases, 15%. Now, look, there are some enterprise and, of course, places around the world that are not going down the AI path, of course. But they're going to have to delay their initiatives for, I'd say, 12, 18 months, because right now, demand's outstripping supply 15-1. And that's why I sit here and I think tech stocks are going to be up another 25% this year, despite tariffs, despite nervousness, worries about stretch valuation. I think Street is massively underestimating what demand looks like in this AI revolution, second, third, fourth derivatives.
And so if demand is going to be that strong, and you just mentioned tariffs, I mean, do you think tariffs are somewhat of a non-issue, meaning you're just going to pay what you have to pay because you need these chips to do what you've planned to do?
Yeah, and Courtney, you're talking about with Elon before. I mean, I think this is all a poker game, right? And I think, it's very easy to get nervous in terms of first shots across the bow. I don't believe it's going to massively impact the chip and overall AI revolution. I think there's also going to be some gaps in terms of whether it's Apple, Tesla, potentially, some opportunities that they could ultimately not really even be impacted by some of the tariffs as this all plays out. But what we're seeing here in Asia, less nervousness about tariffs than maybe even 6 weeks ago. And that's bullish when you look at this relative to overall demand and what's going to really be a game of high-stakes poker between DC and Beijing.
Finally, Dan, you mentioned Apple. We're on the lookout for this newest member of the family announcement. Any clarity in your mind what we should expect?
Yeah, look, I think it's another product that's going to just fuel more and more of what I believe is just a broader, not just upgrade cycle, but Apple is going to continue to see this renaissance of growth. I think when you sort of look at the price point from an SE perspective, especially emerging markets, especially developing markets, I think India more and more is going to become a bigger market. This just shows Cupertino is not just going to play on the high end. They're going to focus on middle market. They're going to focus on rolling out Apple Intelligence. We think to China really soon with Alibaba as a partner.
Well, they better. I mean, I don't think this is like, I think Apple's way late, though. And I think this is a good move by them, but let's be very clear, they're very late. They've been losing market share. They've been getting their butts kicked. So it's about time they take this thing serious, right? And get a somewhat compelling product out there that's at a more affordable price point. Because they're getting whacked all over the place. Have you seen their China market share numbers? It's no bueno. So that's something very important to keep in mind. All right, Palantir CEO.
Because we've been talking about Ukraine all morning, and you've been very involved in that battle. I want to show you this real quick, if I could. I don't know if we even have time. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was just speaking literally moments ago, and after a 4.5-hour meeting with Russian officials in Saudi Arabia to reset relations with Moscow. And I would get to your thoughts on it, if we could.
The goal of today's meeting was to follow up on the phone call the president had a week ago and begin to establish those lines of communication. The work remains. Today is the first step of a long and difficult journey, but an important one, and President Trump is committed to bringing an end to this conflict.
We are trying to bring an end to the conflict. Apparently, we're also asking for something on the order of $500 billion in terms of access to minerals and other things for Ukraine. Is that a fair deal?
Look, I don't know anything about the deal and the intricacies of it. What I would say is, first of all, you put up people on the screen who are very talented. So if I look at this from an entrepreneurial perspective, the first thing I'm looking at is, okay, those three people are very talented. The second thing, I'll tell you something I think Trump does very, very well. He says, I'm not going to accept a paradigm that essentially leads to a stupid conclusion. When he's like, okay, great, I'm going to give you a new paradigm. You don't like my paradigm? Give me another one. And I think he's quite brilliant at this. So what I see is he's like, I'm not accepting a paradigm where America just keeps financing things. There's no real discussion. I'm sending three of the most talented people there. Let's figure it out. And again, what I would say to people who are trying to figure out how to be builders is, do not accept a paradigm that is stupid, no matter who tells you that you should have it.
Okay, let me ask you a different question about paradigm shifting. So one of the things that's going on right now, Elon Musk working with the Doge team in Washington to try to get at some of the misspending that's been going on over the years.
Fraud, waste, and abuse.
And I think there's a lot of people who are super supportive of that. At the same time, you're hearing about resignations and all sorts of other things of folks who are questioning the access that they're getting to data. You are somebody who lives within data. You care about safety and security of data. Do you think we should have those concerns? And is there a way to do whatever's being done right now so that you can take the country and those who are questioning all of this with you,
well,
if you will?
What I don't like about what's going on is I just view this as, well, let's watch the Democratic Party commit suicide. And like, I've been a Democrat most of my life. I kind of view myself as outside it, but I don't like watching the Democrats just commit suicide. And what I see is most of the country doesn't really, at this point, given the fraud, waste, and abuse we know is there, 90% of the country is like, get rid of that fraud, waste, and abuse. And I just view this as yet another example of the progressive left boxing themselves into a suicide dance. Now, what the progressive left should be doing is saying, okay, Elon, you're clearly the most qualified person in the world to do something like this. We want to dialogue with you about how you're doing and what are you doing. I don't believe that's actually what happened. And again, I like Elon. I know I think he's obviously the most important builder in the world. And I just think, if you want to say my former side, I don't believe that they're actually engaging. I think it's like another dance where I'm supposed to say, of course, like whatever. It's like there's this one issue where and then you get boxed into, you cannot solve the problem. And then I would say, what is the biggest problem in this society? Biggest problem in this society from my perspective is legitimacy of our institutions. Why aren't they legitimate? They're not legitimate because, okay, do any of you really believe that 99% of your taxpayer dollars are being spent? But last and not least, and probably arguably most importantly, there's two revolutions happening. One is transparency and one is AI. Okay, so why is it that we do not know where every penny of our money goes? Like, how do you explain that to people? And by the way, slightly more technically, what large language models do is you can go into the contracts and see exactly what happened. So in the past, we couldn't do this. Now we can. The right response is, we want this to happen. We want to happen. We want to be involved in the dialogue. The real response is, it feels like the people criticizing Elon don't want it to happen. And this is going to destroy those people.
Yeah, no, that's a compelling case Alex Karp brings up there, right? A compelling case.